All right, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Today we have the first virtual stop in our Repro Road Show. This one is special for those of you in Denver and Boulder, and we have Michaela Rosen from Planned Parenthood with us and Cassandra Rendon Morales from the ACLU of Colorado. And I am going to turn it over to Cassandra, and I hope everyone enjoys the webinar.
Hi folks, like Delina said, my name is Cassandra Rendon Morales. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I am the Reproductive Rights Campaign Coordinator at the ACLU of Colorado.
Hey y'all, my name is Michaela Rosen. I use she, her pronouns as well, and I am the campaign organizer for Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains.
And again, I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. I want to thank Delina, our awesome MC, who is going to be walking us through this presentation today. And then a major shout out to the Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Coalition, who we do this work alongside. So today you'll leave with a deeper understanding on abortion later in pregnancy. You'll leave with details about the abortion ban on the November 2020 ballot, tools to bring home, ways to stay engaged, and we will go over Q&A at the end. A little housekeeping note, we will be sending out a follow-up email with a copy of these slides, and this recording will be live on ACLU's YouTube channel. So if you don't already follow us, subscribe. You'll have a copy of all of our other webinars that we've done during the summer. But again, look out for that follow-up email.
Okay, so we're gonna get started and just start with understanding the federal landscape. We've seen a lot of action from the Supreme Court in the recent days, and I'm gonna go over a couple of cases that we've gotten verdicts on in the last month, and then talk about what's coming down the line. So you probably have heard about June Medical Services versus Russo. This was the first abortion case to reach the Supreme Court since the confirmation of Judges Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch. Those nominations really changed the makeup of the court to be more of an anti-reproductive rights and anti-abortion makeup than we've had in the past. So we were excited to receive a 5-4 victory on this case. And this case would have required abortion providers in Louisiana to have hospital admission requirements, which is a way of restricting access and putting unnecessary barriers in place on abortion providers. And then another one we've seen recently is Trump versus Pennsylvania. This one, they issued their ruling in Trump versus Pennsylvania upholding 2 Trump administration rules that allow employers and universities to deny their employees and students coverage for contraceptive care based on religious or moral objection. So these are just 2 really big cases that have impacted reproductive rights recently. And I think it's important to note that politicians at the state and federal level are going to continue doing everything they can to try and take control of our bodies, our lives, and our futures. In fact, abortion is on the ballot in 2020, not just in Colorado, but also in Louisiana. Politicians are exploiting a pandemic to try and restrict access of reproductive care. And there are actually 16 other abortion cases that are just one step away from the Supreme Court as we speak. So while we have received a victory in June Medical, we can't bank on having those victories and everything coming down the line. And that's why it's super, super imperative that we continue to focus on protecting abortion access on the state level, because we are not certain we can rely on the Supreme Court.
Yes, thank you, Michaela, for that. And I just want to give you a small resource. So there is this thing called the SCOTUS blog. It's not affiliated with SCOTUS directly, but you can download it as an app, or you can follow them on Twitter. to receive comprehensive coverage and interpretations of the rulings that are coming out from the SCOTUS cases. So really small resource, super helpful, not affiliated, so please don't at them and drag them on Twitter when you don't agree on a case. Awesome. So now we are going to talk about abortion later in pregnancy. So what is abortion later in pregnancy, right? So abortion later in pregnancy, or also known as later abortion, is a political concept. It's not a medical concept. This political concept was created by anti-abortion politicians and activists seeking to ban all abortion. Later abortion typically describes abortion during the second or third trimester, but it's important to note that 1% of abortions in the US are performed at or after 21 weeks gestation. Later abortion bans impose one-size-fits-all restrictions that do not account for the unique circumstances of every pregnancy. So they're arbitrary, they're medically unnecessary and unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade. One more thing to note on arbitrary bans is that arbitrary bans makes it difficult for someone seeking an abortion to access care and navigate the financial and logistical barriers in a timely manner. And you'll learn more about those barriers later on. Another thing that's important to note is that Colorado does not currently restrict later abortion. We're a safe haven for later abortion care. One more thing. Reporters and the media may use the term late-term abortion, and we should really work on educating them, on letting them know that this is actually a made-up term by anti-abortion activists, and that medically pregnancies and abortions are discussed in trimesters, not terms. Another good option would be calling it this, abortion later in pregnancy, or like I mentioned above, later abortion. Awesome. So Michaela mentioned that we do have a proposition, an abortion ban on the ballot, and that proposition is Proposition 115. I want to walk you through where this proposition came from and then who's behind it. So Proposition 115 bans abortion after 22 weeks. It takes away individual decision-making. These efforts are led by Due Date Too Late, which are a group of anti-abortion activists and politicians. You might have seen these folks at the Capitol, because leaders of Due Date Too Late are the same people who show up and testify in support of personhood abortion ban bills at the legislature year after year. They are also the same people who champion anti-LGBTQ bills this year, most notably the anti-trans youth bills that criminalize doctors who treat trans youth for gender dysphoria. They have consistently sought to criminalize doctors and take away the freedom of individual decision-making for Coloradans. Later abortion bans championed by anti-abortion politicians failed at the legislature in 2018 and again in 2020. And we truly believe that Proposition 115 is a response to past failed personhood abortion bans and almost seen as a necessary step towards banning all abortion in Colorado. So, how does this Proposition 115 impact reproductive freedom? Well, for starters, it bans abortion after 22 weeks. There's no exception for health, rape, or incest when the fetus will not survive. Doctors face criminal charges and medical license suspension.
Also, Prop 115 is not based in medical facts, as Cass explained beautifully. Even the language we use, the language that is late-term abortion isn't grounded in medical facts. It severely hurts real people and takes away their freedom for personal decision-making around their medical care. And it also destroys Colorado's ability to be a safe haven. Notably, 2/3 of later abortion patients that in Colorado have come from out of state to get that care. So this proposition would deeply impact people's ability to access the care they need.
Yes. And not to mention that every pregnancy is unique. So placing restrictions on abortion care is not only dangerous, it's intrusive and a violation of our most basic rights. So it might come as a surprise to you. Just kidding. This Proposition 115 is an attack on Roe v. Wade. It's unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade and cases that followed outside of the Supreme Court hold that before fetal viability, which is defined as developing fetus's ability to survive outside of the womb with or without medical intervention. So before fetal viability, a state cannot ban abortion under any circumstances. The decision lies with the pregnant person. After the point of fetal viability, any abortion must have an exception for the pregnant person's life and health, and it must be up to the medical provider to determine whether their health and life is in jeopardy. So Proposition 115 doesn't have health exception at all. If a pregnant person is experiencing physical or mental psychological health barriers because of their pregnancy, they still can't have an abortion under Proposition 115. And it also limits the exception for life when the individual is in immediate danger due to a physical illness or injury, not psychological. Further, there is no exception for rape or incest or when the fetus will not survive. So now I'm going to hand it over to Michaela, who's going to guide you on how to talk about abortion later in pregnancy.
Awesome. Thanks, Cass. So let's start with Erica Christensen, and this is her photo up on the screen here. Part of advocating around abortion later in pregnancy is making sure we have all the facts and stories. So I'm going to share with you her story and a little bit about her work that she's done with her organization, Patient Forward. So Erica was 35 when she and her husband, Garen, who was 38 at the time, decided to start a family. After suffering a miscarriage, they were happy to become pregnant again soon after. At 30 weeks into her pregnancy was diagnosed with a rare condition that would prevent the fetus from surviving outside of the womb. She shares her story in her own words of traveling from her home state of New York to Colorado and back again in order to terminate the pregnancy that they had wanted, in order to safeguard her health and prevent unnecessary suffering. She's extremely vocal about her support and her personal experience with abortion later in pregnancy. And I think this photo is from February of this year when she was testifying against a federal 22-week abortion ban at the U.S. State Committee on the Judiciary. After seeing the power of patient narratives firsthand, she says they began organizing later abortion patients across the country, and she and her partner Garen now run Patient Forward, and you can see their work at patientforward.org. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, Cass. So, like I said, it's really important that we have all of the information straight when we're talking about this issue. So I'm going to share some of the research. The research has been divided into two categories of reasons why people are seeking or like situations that impact people to seek out abortions later in pregnancy. So new information. This is new information that changes the course of the pregnancy. For example, the pregnancy discovered after the first trimester, a fetal diagnosis that would impact carrying the pregnancy to term in any way, a newly discovered threat to the health or life of the patient, or a sudden life event. And these include anything from natural disasters, loss of a partner, or loss of a job. There's really a whole range of things that could fit into the sudden life event category. And then on the other side, we have barriers to obtaining care as early as desired. And these are already existing barriers. So we have abortion restrictions that are burdensome and regulations that are burdensome that we've seen across multiple states, a lot of states. Difficulty paying for an abortion earlier and needing more time to accrue those funds. Interaction with the crisis pregnancy center, and anything including childcare struggles, conflicts with family or your partner, and also difficulty finding an abortion provider in addition to finding travel to that abortion provider if it's not nearby. And also something to flag here too is that plenty of people fit into both of these categories, right? Like you can have multiple of these existing at one time that would impact a person's life and lead them to make a decision to seek out an abortion later in pregnancy. Next slide. So we're going to talk about Colorado as a safe haven state. And these are a couple, Cassie, you can go ahead and press next, and a couple headlines will show up. And these are headlines that we've seen across the last couple months. So we believe that no patient should have to travel across state lines to receive their health care, but unfortunately, that is what we are seeing. And Colorado is one of those places that patients are able to come to for their abortion care. And the ban that we've been talking about would have disparate impacts not only on our Colorado residents, but also on patients across the country. And we've seen attempts to restrict access to abortion care across the country. In fact, according to the Guttmacher Institute, 57% of women of reproductive age are now living in a state that is either hostile or very hostile to abortion rights. But in Colorado, we are fortunate to serve as a safe haven region where patients are able to come here from all over to receive the care that they are truly needing. And then just a little bit more context of how many out-of-state patients we are seeing at Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. So in February, we saw 16 patients from Texas, and in April, that number increased over tenfold to 212 patients. And at that time, we were seeing courts and lawmakers in Texas banning abortion because of the pandemic and considering it as a non-essential procedure. However, it is very clear that it was essential because we've had more than 200 people coming to Colorado that says it's essential, absolutely. So, looking at the impacts this has had, it's more important than ever that we defeat this Prop 115 and continue to protect abortion access and care in our state. So on to how to destigmatize your language and how to talk about abortion later in pregnancy. So we know that late-term abortion is not a medical term, so we say abortion later in pregnancy. This is more of an encompassing term for all of the unique situations that are the reasons that people seek these out. And so when you talk about this with your friends or your family or your neighbors or whoever you are talking about abortion later in pregnancy with, really share the possible circumstances that would lead an individual to seek care for abortion later in pregnancy, like the research we went over, like all of those different components that can add to it. And also lead with values and a model showing compassion. So I think it's imperative to include the value that every person should be able to make a decision that's best for their lives and their bodies, right? Like that is a value that very easily fits into this conversation.
Yes, and also along the do's, we want to remember the don'ts, right? So we don't want to focus on examples of fetal diagnosis, rape, or incest. We don't want to use words like tragic and awful, because in doing that, we're repeating the opposition's language and framing. So when we do talk about it, we need to remember that these folks have unique. Sorry, there is a fire truck. I live by a fire station passing by. One sec. Okay, sorry, that happens at least 3 times a week. So we want to lean on offering empathy, offering support for people seeking abortion later in pregnancy, and we don't want to shame them, right? Because we don't know folks' situations and what it's like for others, right? So we need to remember that. So now we are going to walk through a couple of things or go through a couple of things that you can do to stay connected and get involved with us. So I do just want to say that for folks on this webinar today, you already took action. You showed up today, you're here, you're learning alongside us. So give yourselves a pat on the back, like you're here today, you're learning new material, so you took action for that. We also want you all to know about the Colorado Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Speakers Bureau that we have going on right now. So if you have something to say about abortion later in pregnancy, we're asking you to join the Speakers Bureau, and you can do so by clicking on this bit.ly link and filling out that Google form. If you want to share your abortion later in pregnancy story, or you have worked with folks or currently work with folks who have, again, visit this bit.ly link to learn more about the Speakers Bureau. We're also asking folks to text no bans to 33777. And by doing that, you would be joining an ACLU exclusive texting list. And this is really important because once we roll out our kind of like our volunteer program around this proposition, we will be like hitting you all up on that list first. For those folks who are interested, like I'm going to be reaching out and being like, hey, do you want to come phone bank, right? Do you want to come help lead a webinar? Or, you know, do you want to come text bank with us? So things like that. So again, all you have to do is text no bans to 33777, and that is to join the ACLU of Colorado's texting list. And I'll let Michaela talk about their involvement.
Yeah, so similarly with how you sign up for the ACLU's volunteer base, you can go to the bit.ly link here, https://bit.ly/getinvolvedpprm2020. And that's going to be the Planned Parenthood exclusive list that we will contact as we are moving forward in all of our work. And yeah, you can always follow us on social media, and we really hope that you continue to talk to your community about abortion later in pregnancy and about the proposition, because as we know, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we are really counting on you to share what you've learned here today in the efforts of protecting abortion access in Colorado.
Yes. And we would never let you leave without a list of resources. So these are all of the resources that we use to put this presentation together, that we use to do our work. You will have access to this list of resources once I send out that follow-up email. So you can click through there, save whatever you want, share them out with your friends. And now we will move into questions. But as we move into questions, I do want to put up our direct contact information in case you have any questions, or you're like, hey, Cass, like I really want more in-depth research on abortion later in pregnancy. Where can I do that, right? Or hey, I really want to get involved with this campaign. Like you can directly email myself, or you can email Michaela. And this is our direct contact information.
All right, so right now we don't have any questions, but if you do have questions, please type them into the Q&A box and we will do our best to answer them. And I want to thank We've had a handful of people already text us to become involved in this campaign, and that is just wonderful news. Our first question. What do you think the chances of this proposition passing are? I don't know.
I can take that, Cass, if you want.
Okay. Yeah, and I can elaborate.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think that it's important to note that there are so many circumstances happening right now that are unprecedented that make it a little difficult to know the answer to this question. I think like specifically pointing to COVID-19 and like that changing the way campaigns work. And we are lucky to have mail voting access in Colorado. So I think that works to our favor. And I think as long as we continue to have these conversations and keep fighting, Colorado has overwhelmingly leaned towards voting down measures like this, but we need to make sure we show up and talk about it.
Yes, I want to echo that, especially during a pandemic, right? So I think the more we learn, the more we grow, and the better advocates we become for reproductive health and access. So it all depends on us, and it really depends on us showing up at the ballot box, talking to our friends, our family, our chosen family. So it just depends.
And Cass, can you give us that text number again?
Yes, give me 1 second. So you can text no bans, NOBANS, to 33777. Again, that's texting no bans to 33777.
And Emily says if we're interested in joining your campaign as another campaign working towards the same goal, how should we go about that?
Let's talk. You can directly email us, both of us, and we can begin to have those conversations. I know that there are groups out there already who came out and said that they will not, be supporting this proposition. So I think the first step to that is connecting and, sharing our resources and coming in. Maybe we can do a presentation for you. We can have a meeting with your group, but definitely connecting. So please take down our information.
Great. And this person asks, what does fetal viability mean in regards to the reference to Roe v. Wade?
Yes, let me pull up my notes just so I make sure. Giving you the correct information. Michaela, do you all have a specific definition for that? I can share mine as well.
I think it'd be great if you could go ahead, because I think you covered it in one of your slides on Roe.
So fetal viability, which is defined as a developing fetus, is ability to survive outside of the womb with or without medical intervention. So that's the definition that I used in the presentation.
And this one is, I think, more of a philosophical question, but we can take it. How can women gain total freedom of our bodies? How can we start to do this? I think this is a good way. Let's defeat the ban.
Yes, I think resiliency is key to making sure that we continue to have our own bodily autonomy, right? So showing up, learning, and joining a movement that feels true to you, true to, being able to have total autonomy over yourself. So continue to show up, learn, and engage those folks that you are in community with, right? Because the more that we share out, the more that we impact folks and are in community and can move towards a collective goal.
Great. And second to last question, I believe, is why do Republicans keep challenging abortion year after year? Why can they keep doing this? And anyone who's elected can bring a bill in our legislature. So that's why they keep doing it. Do you all have thoughts?
I just want to ditto that. I think you answered it well.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd like a clarification in case the ban would take place. So say, it goes into effect and illness threatens the life of the fetus as well as the mother. The law would forbid an abortion and therefore risk 2 lives.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah. Say the ban takes place.
Yes.
And there's an illness that threatens the life of the fetus as well as the mother. The law would forbid an abortion and therefore risk 2 lives. That's the question. Would the law forbid abortion if the life of the mother and the fetus were affected?
So it limits the exception for life when the individual is in immediate danger due to a physical illness or injury, but not psychological, right? So that's the only exception.
And then we have a thank you from Brittany, who thanks both ACLU and PPRM for being amazing and leading the way. So thank you, Brittany. All right. We'll give it a second for any other questions. Any final thoughts, Cass, Michaela?
I will say that, in the past we have defeated abortion bans at the ballot box, but it always requires help. So if today you want to get involved with us, please do. Like, we're asking you to get involved. We're asking you to go back to your community and share these resources, because although we're here today, like, there's work to be done outside of this bubble, right? This bubble of community. So it takes work. Get involved. We need your help.
Yeah, and I will say, just echoing getting involved, I think continue to show up to these, and if you have any thoughts on this at all and any personal experience, right now our main work is to collect the stories so that we can amplify those as we move forward spreading this information. But this is going to continue to evolve and change throughout the months, and we really do need your help to show up and beat this. And also, I will say that this is 22-week ban is not something we have never seen before, right? We've seen this in the legislature, but this is a new strategy on the ballot as a goal to make incremental changes to this, because they know, based on the past of how we voted on this, unlike earlier bans and things like that. So yeah, so just be wary of the strategy, and we're excited to keep working with you and keep getting out there in our communities.
Great. And our last question is, why don't we propose a bill that would give women control over their medical care? And there has been different ideas floated around, but what I would suggest to the person who's proposing this is that you talk to your legislator and ask them to carry this kind of a bill. Legislators are very, they listen to what we want. And they want to know they have support when they propose something. So, please let your legislator know that you want something like this, and hopefully you will move it forward for all of us. All right. And I think we have finished up the question portion. So thanks everybody for attending.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks to ACLU. It was great to be working with you on this.
Yes, we love working with Planned Parenthood.
Yes, thank you, Michaela. Thank you to your team, and thank you for everyone who attended.
Yeah. All right, so if you have friends in Colorado Springs, tell them that we'll be virtually joining them on Tuesday.
Same time, So for folks who signed up, maybe your friends signed up to join us today, but they couldn't, they can always join us next week, same time. And the Thursday of next week as well, we'll be hosting our third roadshow.
Great. All right, everybody have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.